From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent? The man who lifts condominiums off his chest. Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello everybody, it's James here, Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast, doing the plugs as we do quickly here and then we get into the meat of it, so donmuraco.com for all your signed merchandise and Amazon. Whatever it is for Owen, Hart and the other book they wrote about The Rock. And as I say, the intros get worse every single week, but this week we're going to be doing WWF Year in Review once again, and if we get through February, I'll be surprised. I've written a billion questions, although I just ran through the questions with Don of the first two, and he didn't know the answers to either of them. So we will probably get through February. And speaking of Don, here is the man himself, the beach bum, The Rock, the magnificent one, Don Muraco. Hello.
This would be good morning to you, huh?
Yeah.
A very early good morning to you.
Yeah. You know when they say it's one of those.
I'm trying
days.
to make few connections with different guys, but they're on the East Coast, and the timing's been kind of rough.
Yeah.
We
didn't even speak about that, did we? We were going to have our first guest this week, by the way, everyone.
Yeah.
And timing's weird. We'll figure that out.
He didn't get back. He never called me back.
Did he?
In fact, Evan Ginsberg too. I reached out to him, the writer and the guy that did that movie, 350. He's got a lot of.
So like a guest host kind of thing.
No, just a question, or something. Just somebody to talk. He's got a million opinions about McMahon and the state of wrestling and
So right.
Things change. It's
Goodness me, doesn't it?
Sad that everybody should be watching old tapes of Muraco Morales. Forget all this newfangled stuff.
There isn't even many tapes of you and Morales. That's the thing. It's like one of the two title changes isn't even committed to celluloid. Boy,
we've worked a lot. A lot of gardeners. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know I was with them.
How often were house shows or untelevised events, or whatever terminology you want to use, how often were they recorded? Or were they never recorded unless it was like on the Prism Network or something?
Yeah, owned by the Garden. They had a Spectrum in Philadelphia. Had a I don't know when it was kind of selective when they played it, when they had rights to it and stuff. Maybe it's the Spectrum channel now, but then there was a Spectrum. They had a live Monsoon, and a couple other guys would do the color.
Yeah, so there was,
and then then it kind of went after that. But probably not a lot of them in those days.
So unless it was, so in my mind, it's New York, Boston, Spectrum, and Toronto.
Not even Boston. Well, maybe Boston. Not really. That would really be like that time that did the me and Tito and I switching the belt, and they missed the whole last 10 minutes. Or so of the match.
Yeah.
Poor Tito.
I know that the Pedro, I can't remember if it's the first or second. It's one of them where it's just lost, absolutely lost. And the WWF is very good, probably the best territory for saving their footage as well. So if they don't have it, then probably no one's going to have it unless. But you never know. There's some oddballs, some me's.
I've come across them a couple of times in the. I don't remember. Actually, I can't really say that often. More like the snooker or the Florida stuff.
Yeah.
That I've done. I haven't seen. I think I've seen a Pedro Morales. Actually, I don't think I've even seen much of Steamboat of myself.
You know what?
And we were late.
You okay?
Yeah, I was Googled it.
Oh, right. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, there is actually footage, right, of you and Ricky Steamboat, but it's not in a match. I hadn't realised, and we're going to be talking about this in a future episode, is I didn't realize that you hosted the Body Shop after Jesse Ventura left, but I will ask you about that in a future episode. But one of the ones,
I'll have to,
yeah.
I don't remember it. Yeah.
Oh well,
But you can jog my memory when we get to.
Yeah, we'll have a clip going as well. And
one like Tony Gurria. Tony Gurria, I've seen his. I saw a podcast of his, and 1976. I went here and I did this, and did that, and then I'm moving ahead, and of March of '77. Boy, he's older than I am too. He's got all the dates and probably even the times down, and probably even the guys who wrestled.
Deary me. He, the last few years, Tony Gurria, which is pretty much all the footage I've seen of him, because I didn't really see any of the 70s, but it's just one of those things where they just, as soon as they got him away from the tag teams, or any good tag team partners, they just put him right to the bottom and just basically forced his hand to retire. And, they just made him do a singles, he lost every single time, and they just decided to...
Well, he got too comfortable.
Yeah.
That's how it was, and it was still a territory. Pretty much, and hadn't changed it. And you can't, it's not it wasn't a business you could get too comfortable with. And, he had a home, a business up in Connecticut, and 2 sons that were grown up. Daughter, too, now. I didn't remember before, but pretty sure he had a daughter as well. And, he got comfortable and was doing, had a business going on outside of wrestling. And that was it. So he was lucky that they were lucky he picked him up as an agent,
He was it's the term homesteading.
He got a citizenship long ago, though. I'm pretty sure, long, way back, probably in Dean Ho days or something. When he was first traveling around, I imagine.
Do you think when they sort of shunted Tony down the card in those last few years, would they have reduced his pay as well? Or would they just keep him on the same pay and just, since he was, long term?
Well, he get paid for the match. Yeah, well, his pay would have reduced because he wasn't in those, those world tag team championship matches, and they'd always mark that up as a semi and give you semi money. Unless they were really and I don't know what, I really don't know what kind of money they got. But I know it was decent, was better than, with Johnny Roz and SD and those kind of guys were getting their opening the card. The other guys, everybody had their own levels, and it was a different time,
I was just wondering if you ascended to like a certain level and then they put you back down again, would they only pay you to where they put you on the card, or if you're a long time stalwart of the company?
Oh, nobody's going to do any favors now.
Well, no, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, no, he's in, not this business, Nobody's kicking you. Maybe they might kick you an extra 20 or so, but there's nothing,
Vince McMahon, either junior or senior, I imagine will know how deeply embedded your roots are in the area to how much he can pay you, and you still work there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people just lived there. It became home for them. As like Tampa did to all the wrestlers. Everybody Hulk lived around Tampa in Florida, and then there was a migration. That's where you go. Boy, you drop a bomb that place, you knock out all 75, 80% of all retired, or of all the wrestling WWF ex Hall of Famers or whatever,
Yeah, half the people I've interviewed have been from Tampa, and if you drop the bomb there, that's every wrestling convention gone for the rest of for at least 50
years. Yeah. They have a big community, though. They put out,
we shall get back on then. And we had a bit of an internet issue there. And what was the first question? We'll just launch into it. Actually, do you know what? Before we do, one more thing about Tony Gurria is he's always known as a tag team guy. And I don't think I've ever asked you how good he actually was as a wrestler.
Good. Yeah, he's good. Good boy. He held that spot for years and years. And everywhere around, he was You want to say, he didn't have a promo, but unless you do, you're into promos and you do them a lot, then you don't, you don't have a promo that you deliver really, unless you're practicing or doing them a lot. He wasn't a promo guy, but he was safe, couldn't hurt you. He had, if you, I'm sure, if you'd have, you'd have focused angles and stuff around him, he could have, he would have turned it around. He would have got it together. I don't know. He was never really put in a position, laid out, bleeding, to make the come back from the death, those types, those type of programs, those type of comebacks. I would be surprised if he could carry that kind of load.
I'm just thinking who was his best tag team partner, but I can't even remember them all. I know there was Rick Martel. I know there was Dean Ho. Luke, it wasn't Luke Graham. I don't know who else there was, but I don't know who his best one was.
Haystacks? Tito?
Oh, in the early ones.
Yeah. Larry Zbyszko?
That's the kind of question. That's the kind of question I really should have researched beforehand before asking.
Well, those guys were around that tag, that tag. Yeah. Probably Ricky Martel, was one of the, he was a world. Martel was a hell of a worker. There another promo guy. Well, he had that Pedro Morales, that amigo, I love you, baby. He had that French accent, and women loved him. He was, so maybe a little hot and cold with the men for babyface, but the ladies and stuff. But he's a hell of a worker. Tony was a good tag partner for he knew his role. He wasn't a shit disturber. No drama.
What's it mean to be a good hand? Can it be a backhanded compliment sometimes? Say, yeah, he's a good hand.
No, means you're safe. Means you always produce. You don't. No. You're not going to go off the chart. You're not going to go off. And if it is, you are. You can. You can do the Bruiser Brody if you're dragged out into that. The King Curtis, Abdullah the Butcher thing. You could babyface or something like that. But you're not going to take it. You're not going to take it to that level.
Mm.
You follow you're a good babyface. You follow the heel or that's leading you, and that's what direction he's going. And if not, you can lead the mat. You can, if you got somebody or something there, you could, you can lead or you can contribute to what if somebody's less experienced or less savvy.
Did Tony Gurria ever agent one of your matches or throw in suggestions for a finish here or there?
Probably, a lot of those finishes that weren't, off of TV, there weren't the finishes that weren't crucial. So, any type of suggestion to change it up from the norm, because you get pretty humdrum at nights going, when I tell you the routine of the road. So, sometimes, something to suggest, you're spaced out. You're not, you may not be that tuned up. The house might be going, or, you're not coming back, or you're pushing for, or you're just drawing blank. But yeah, they could, sure.
With crucial finishes, as you say, who was the person or over the years, at least in the WWF, who was the person to tell you what you were going to be doing?
Vince, Pat, working it out with them, in those, in the room with the, with Vince and with the guy, whoever. Vince, Vince number one, of course. Vince, and then I'm sure Pat be around. George Scott in his day, I'm sure, I don't know what happened. most of the time that I was there, that it was Vince or Pat, and later Strongbow and other people had input, but boy, the TV was run on such a large, was just a machine. It was grinding them in and grinding them out, kept changing, so fast. It's hard to put your finger on, what different guys had different ideas at different times.
There was a melting pot and a hodgepodge of ideas.
I'm
sure. Right, we'll go into the main portion of the show then, WWF Year in Review. We're going to start with February and February the 2nd. Now, the first couple I happened to mention to you, and I know you didn't really know either guy, but I'll mention him anyway. February 2nd, Gino Hernandez dies at age 28, ruled to be a cocaine overdose, but some claim he was murdered and it was all a setup. Did you ever actually meet Gino?
Met him a couple times, but he was real young when I was young when I was in Texas. So he was, he was super. I think his mother was a Mexican lady, and his father was supposed to be Paul Bosch or something like that.
Yeah, that's been a bit of a rumor. It's probably not.
I don't
true.
know. Yeah, I guess I didn't. He came in afterwards. He came. He was just before the Von Erichs, before they started. Before David became of age, and then all the Kerry and Kevin and the Von Erichs, came, so that everybody else was gone by that time,
Yeah. What was the rumor mill? What was that saying, and how long did it take to filter up to you guys up in Stamford or New York?
What year was that?
1986. Everything's going to be 1986.
Well, that was one of the last outposts. That was were the Freebirds in there already? The Freebirds had been there already.
Yeah, the Freebirds. Yeah, the Freebirds. I think
that was kind of the last stand, wasn't it? That was like the Alamo, the last Texas last stand.
Yeah,
I guess they were doing
died.
good. Chris Adams. They had a good TV, and then a Texas TV. I didn't. I don't know what was. I spent a few months in the Dallas territory. After that, the notorious Dusty Rhodes Rock and Roll Revival of Tampa, and after that, I went back to Georgia. But I was only there a couple of months working for Fritz, and that was in between the Suns, just before the Suns came, and before Gino Hernandez and the other guys started.
Yeah,
but I remember they had a good TV. They had a good TV program going on, and Coke was crazy in those days. It just ran rampant.
Yeah, they supposedly found like 5 times the amount of cocaine that would kill somebody in his body, and I think that's what's led to certain people believing that he was set up basically, and they found it in his stomach as well. So. What did you hear in the WWF? Was it that he basically killed himself, or had you heard that somebody had killed him, or did you hear both?
Just the base, whatever rumor happened to be floating. It would never, I don't remember anything ever taking hold or making heads or tails of anything. But we knew about it, and it was, everybody kind of was pulling for him because they were like one of the last outposts for territory wrestling on the horizon, and they were doing some business, and then all those guys passed.
Is the Dallas territory the most depressing territory in the history of wrestling?
Good chance.
Although
I never made those. I never made those trips in Oklahoma and West, Mississippi and those the Watson's guys did. So I don't. It's hard to say. I imagine that would be pretty.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because David died. All of them died apart from Kevin. I think all of them. Well, I think David died of something, probably an overdose. And then it was covered up by Bruiser Brody, and then the rest of them killed themselves. And then Gino Hernandez died, And then it's just like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Kiss of death, that place. I'll move on. February the 2nd again. Paul Christie debuts for the WWF in Richmond, Ohio. And I know you didn't really know Paul Christie very much, apart from...
He was Pat Tanaka's partner, right?
Tanaka's partner?
Pat Tanaka's partner, yeah.
Oh, you'll have to explain that then.
Weren't they tag partners?
Oh, right. I thought you mentioned something else.
No, I don't know. No, he was Paul. He and Pat Tanaka were a tag team, weren't they?
I don't know. I thought he was a single for most of it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Paul Diamond was Pat Tanaka's.
Okay, all right. I got my mistake.
No, okay. He did one awful TNT appearance. This is when Mean Gene was hosting it, and he starts talking about being a magician, and he read out a weird manifesto. And it was like a complete train wreck of a segment that they just showed anyway. But he wasn't really used on TV very often after that, apart from to lose to people. But he was a mainstay of the Poffo territory for quite a while. And in between them shutting down, then he turns up in the WWF.
He could have got himself a nice contract there. Those are the days they're passing contracts out left and right. Everybody, I think the Sheik got a contract, and then they realized they didn't want him, and they, just sent him home. Kept paying him a couple of years.
The Sheik is in Ed Farhat.
Costco, Iron Sheik, yeah.
Oh, the Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, what?
Yeah, when he went there to Atlanta, a bunch of guys went there when the wars were going on, because they were Bischoff, I guess. Although, they're all contracts and everybody's handing out contracts. But I don't know if anybody ever collected on them or anything, or got some of the money. But, it was the going was good. So it's, it's like the wrestlers never had anything like that. As far as wrestler, had anything like that going before.
The Poffo territory I'm referring to is the Lexington one. It shut down in, I think, like 84 or something. But the Iron Sheik story is right. They hired him. I think that was George Scott when he went back to WCW, as it was at the time, like 89. He hired the Iron Sheik, then realised that he was so bad they couldn't put him on TV, and they left him home. And then they realised that he had an optional second year on his contract, and he'd been away from TV so long they just forgot about him, and then the contract rolled over for a second year, and he got paid another $125,000 or something.
Right on.
I'm sure the Iron Sheik and $125,000 a year. I'm sure he'd figure something out to do with that money.
You got perpetual motion, man. Never stop. I talked his he's living with a nephew or a cousin in Toronto, and then they called me last week to do. They were doing a documentary about Jewish wrestlers because of Ernie Brock, my manager, the Grand Wizard. I said, I have no, all I know, he was Jewish. That's about it, as far as I said, well, I don't know, I really don't know. Nobody went around, it was kind of a pre-religious, before the guys became evangelists and stuff,
Or in Ernie's case, afterwards. So wasn't he like a Christian evangelist?
Well, radio.
Yeah.
Radio evangelist. And those are the old days, put your hand on the radio and feel the power and the love coming through to your heart. Oh, yeah. That was Ernie.
Right, so someone's called you doing something about Jewish wrestlers, and then they asked you, do you know any Jewish wrestlers?
Yeah.
So well-prepared documentary then.
Yeah. I haven't contributed much to it, really. But man, they said they put my name in the footnotes. Oh, God.
So he just went,
Hey,
Goldberg.
everything's open. Everything's open territory on wrestling now. That Facebook, YouTube tapes, everything goes.
William Shatner, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. And
I was there with the same year.
Oh,
yeah. We were the same year, or was that Fuji's year?
That would be Fuji's
I was there.
year.
I was there when he was there. It was Fuji's year?
Yeah, it would be Fuji's year, yeah.
Yeah, well, I met him. I was talking. Yeah, well, Stone Cold. Yeah, Stone Cold was there. So. Yeah, I met. He was a good guy. Real, you tell I kind of wanted to talk to the boys and stuff, but didn't want to. He was asking about basketball scores, and talking. He seemed like a pretty cool guy. Oh, Captain Kirk.
Yeah, was he actually a fan, or was he just? Because I think he did 2 appearances, for WWF in '94. And somehow that was enough to get him a Hall of Fame thing. Or was he? No, was he doing? Do you know what he was? He would have been doing Jerry Lawler's induction, I think.
I don't know. Well, closet. Well, back in those days, it wasn't cool. They're all closet fans. Everybody was now. Oh yeah, I know Dusty Rhodes. I remember. Yeah, he used to beat me weekly. Yeah. No, yeah, I knew. Yeah, you knew Dusty Rhodes, sure. Back in those days, nobody watched wrestling.
When did wrestling become cool then? To when was everyone out in the open? Do you think?
It was before Hulk even. Hulk was ready. It was when Vince got in, and Hulk got in there. The timing was perfect. The TV and everything was just, was growing and morphing, and the production and everything else was going. But we were, and before us, we were selling out everywhere. 18, 21,000 here. Every building was smoking, and and it was it was the same. Bruno, San Martino. I say, Bruno, thanks. I told him one time, thanks for all this. He said, yeah, well, when it was later on when he'd mellowed a little bit, because Bruno was kind of aggro for a while. He said, well, no, it's just when I came in, Rucka and those guys, they all right. I was just trying to, fun. And then he did, he held it in that style and he kept it. But the business there was solid as it came along. But then when Hulk hit it just right, and then with a heel like Piper, there wasn't that could, more of a character than a big badass wrestler. Just Vince plotting.
Yeah, well, he definitely did that right. February 8th, Randy Savage beats Tito Santana for the Intercontinental title. Randy Savage, I remember you telling me this ages ago with WrestleMania 3 and the match between Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat where he actually loses the title. And everybody, all the fans at the time and all the dirt sheet writers, of which probably just comprised of Dave Meltzer.
Greatest match ever, yeah.
Exactly. As far as Randy Savage goes, where do you actually feel he was as a great wrestler?
I saw enough of his work. He worked hard. He was transitioning into this period now. I think we're a smaller, a lighter, away from Hulk, away from the big hulking, the Hulks and the 300-pounders into a more athletic type. So he was changing. Ultimate Warrior was kind of thrown in the middle of there. So, but he was part of the change there. So as it went from one body type to another.
The next one, the same event, Boston, Massachusetts, and this was the main event as well of the show. Bruno Sammartino in one of his stints returning, beats Roddy Piper in a steel cage. Do you remember that match?
No.
No? Okay, that's fine.
I remember that they had it. I was I on the card?
That's a great question. After the bout,
I don't know.
Roddy Piper returns wearing a Chicago Bears jersey and tapes posters of William Perry and Jim McMahon onto the cage.
Oh, that's when they were building for WrestleMania then.
This was just
I got all those shirts. I'm a big football. I'm a big mark for football. So Piper has no idea. So you know this guy, and here, William Perry, and he had no use for any football, any gridiron, paraphernalia at all. Although I did steal a 49er jersey from me once, because I used to be the Pro Football Hall of Fame is in Akron, Ohio, and it's around Cincinnati and Columbus and that area, in Atlanta, but we worked there all the time, and I'd always stop there and drag them there. They bought a couple jerseys. They stole one from me later.
Was he into any sports at all, Roddy?
Jeez. Chopping wood. Probably some Scottish, no, not really.
Tossing the caber, throwing porridge.
Yeah. He wasn't a sports guy.
So will you talk about Bruno for me and during his return to wrestling? Why do you think he returned to wrestling at the age he was?
He still hated Junior. Him and Junior were still, I think they still have a feud going. But they were always congenial seemingly in front of everybody. I think, so Vince Sr. was totally gone by that time?
Oh, yeah, he was dead a few years by this time.
86 by now? My goodness. And you said probably just for David, maybe. To get David into some, get David in some angles and get David some paydays and stuff. But Dave was a great kid, nice guy, just a little small. And, you're working in that shadow of the old man. It's hard to probably would have been better just working under somebody else's name or something.
Yeah.
But he had to. He wanted to keep up. He was a good kid.
With Bruno, was he this time? Was he purely kept for the Northeast, or did he travel across the country, or did he just stay with the Northeast and that's where everybody knows you?
Well, this area, this time,
yeah.
He was pretty much he was pretty much retired by now, and I don't know if he would have drawn you a house anywhere else, because it was pretty much Hulk's world by then. Hulk and Warrior and Macho Man and all those, that new era was moving in, and they were, Bruno was even removed, like once or twice removed from my era, with Snuka and Backlund, Tito and Martel, all those baby faces, Patterson, and all that, all the heroes of that era and stuff.
How did you? How did you rate him as a wrestler? Did you ever see him in his prime? And how would you rate him when he was about 50, when he was making his return?
Bruno?
Yeah.
I never saw him in his prime. I never saw him. I guess after he broke his neck, I don't think he ever took any. He tried. Made like he was taking. I don't think he took any bumps after that again. Sensibly so. The guy's got I guess he had a, badly broken neck. And they just didn't patch him back up and send you out back in those days. And either, broken neck was pretty serious. I mean, it's serious anyway. But nowadays they're so gifted medically, there's a lot of things they can do for you. So, you're just careful back in those days. So no, I never saw him working in a full bore in a Madison Square Garden or, something like that.
No, he was just doing the safe versions of matches then during his returns to save his neck.
He would do some selling and stuff, but he was more like, like a crusher, Dick the Bruiser crusher, just strong man. But he would try and he would work with the guys. I guess, when Roddy worked so fast, he had to, had to work. So Bob or one of those guys would, carry a lot. But yeah, he did. He was like a crusher, bruiser kind of guy by that time. He just strong man. He tried to sell, but nobody's buying it.
Yeah, he was
Bruno.
With Bruno, do you think
living legend?
What do you think of him as a commentator? Because he never let him say anything. He was the third man in the booth, and he never said anything.
But that was probably the plan, right? With Vince Jr. Who's Junior and who? Jesse?
Yeah, it would have been Jesse. So it was Vince and Jesse who would do the commentating. And then, let's say, when it's one of those series of squash matches, Bruno would say about one sentence to cover the finish, and then it would just be back to Vince and Jesse for the rest of the episode.
That was a weird deal. Yeah, those are one of those things that are made in the back rooms. And most of the people are dead or are not talking anymore. Just Junior and Bruno, there was no love there. I guess Senior too as well. And Vince was, I don't know. I don't know if Junior was an intermediary for Senior and see, because Bruno never went with that opposition stuff in New York, although he probably could have probably made a big deal. I think which was what Ivan's downfall cost Koloff, I think. It's because they had I don't know. They brought him back and they made him suffer a couple times. Put him on the road driving back and forth.
So exactly with Ivan then. So are you saying that Ivan ran opposition to the WWF in the Northeast at some point?
There was an IWF. Well, he was Ernie Ladd, him, Moscatus. Moscatus was on it because he was an officer. The Mexican, there was probably Mexican money in there for Mexican promotion too. Who was Eddie Ironhorn? Is that Eddie Ironhorn, the guy out of Chicago?
I recognize the name, yeah.
Yeah, he's a media guy out of Chicago and stuff. And he had a big national TV. It was before cable. I don't know how they got TV back in those days distributed like that, but he'd put together a big network of television stations.
Why do you think Bruno and Vince McMahon Jr. they worked together for years after Vince McMahon Sr. died, and you said that they always had a contentious relationship. So why would Bruno, other than the money, and this was long after David had gone, I think Bruno left the WWF in like 88. So why would Bruno stay there for so long if he really hated Vince McMahon as much as he said?
Don't shit where you eat, Bruno became a wealthy man. Bruno made big money, invested it, and had investors. I don't know what kind of backing and stuff he had around New York and families and Pittsburgh, but he was a big deal in Pittsburgh, and then Pittsburgh started growing, and he was a part of that. Bruno was worshipped by a lot of people before my time, but you go those guys, that would still, all those old garden people stuff are still Bruno. Well, they're mostly dead now, dying out, but still
with February the 8th again. But this is actually the episode that's broadcast. I meant to include this in January, but I forgot. It's the kickoff between George the Animal Steele and Macho Man Randy Savage. George Steele tries to give flowers to Miss Elizabeth, and then Randy finds out and tears him up and everything like that. George Steele thoughts, and especially George's successful transition from the old days of how business was run and how people were to portray themselves into becoming a classic sports entertainment style character.
Tom Myers, George the Animal Steele. Well, he was George was a smart school teacher, football coach. Every summer he'd come into New York for 3 months. New York, basically what it was. He'd come into New York for 3 months out of the year, walk out with 100 grand plus for the summer. And, work weekends when it wasn't football season around Pittsburgh and stuff. Bruno used him, and mass guy. And then he made the transition. George, by that time, he was ready to swing. George, he stopped taking bumps long before that. He stopped, he stopped working. He just went with the goofy animal gimmick. And once, he hit a point there, in the early 80s, long before this Macho Man and Elizabeth thing came up. He'd already been, he was already in 4, 5, 6 years into, he'd already made the full on transition into the idiot animal with the green tongue. And he was just living that, and he had an idea for a doll. And then he realized how much the Office, what a big cut the Office wanted out of it. He kind of had second thoughts about it. Yeah, he made the jump real easy. He wanted to be in a spot where he didn't have to work. Just could run around and be a character, which is basically what he was. And how many guys look like George Steele? God, nobody.
It was Jim Myers, by the way, not Tom. I couldn't remember his first name, so just like what you were saying, I just Googled it really quickly, but it was William Jim Myers. Do you think with George the Animal Steele, how big of a draw was he in New York? I mean, in the 70s and stuff. I know you weren't there in the 70s, but did you see the old George Steele, and how did he compare to the new, the cartoon version?
I didn't see I heard he could work, but I guess from what I understand, he did good money with Bruno and Pedro and all the guys, whoever they put, because he wasn't a steady thing. He would come, he'd come and go, and he wouldn't be there long enough, to get burned out up until the mid to later 80s. Was and then you're traveling, around the world anyway. So he was coming in. He's only coming in 2-3 months a year, if that, maybe not, maybe every other year he'd get a gig around Pittsburgh or somewhere else, as George Steele or George something, because he was by then, but he was in, he was in with everybody.
The next one is,
I imagine he was pretty decent.
Yeah, sorry. The next one is February the 9th. We're moving off 8th. Jesse Ventura challenges Tito Santana for the Intercontinental title in Toronto. We've talked about it before, but Jesse Ventura as a wrestler.
Yes. I don't know. By that time, I don't, without having a good bit of heat behind him, or a big, good bit. I don't know. How did that do? Did it do any business? Without having, he could do the posing and stuff. And when he first came in with Adrian, and that, that would get over pretty good because guys were getting pretty buffed and stuff by then. And, It was just kind of something to laugh at. And he was partners with my good friend Steve Strong over here in Hawaii and around for a while. And Strong was a big bodybuilder, so they had a similar type team. Boy, I don't know did that do any mileage in that angle there?
I don't think there was too much mileage because he just does matches here and there in 85 and 86, and then he retires again in 86 because what was the story that you heard for why he retired or why he stopped wrestling?
I don't know. I know he had Domino's Pizza building. He had building rentals going in Minnesota. And then he got into the government thing. He got into the conspiracy, but that was a couple of years later.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened. I don't know why he. Movies. Well, he wanted to be a movie star. That was it. Yeah. Arnold. He was Arnold's friend. He and Arnold were friends, and he was going to be the next Arnold. He was going to be a movie star.
He has said that he ended up having issues with his lungs, and he credited or blamed it on exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. Did that ever get around as a story in the locker room?
No. Jesse wasn't around the guy. Jesse didn't come around too much. He was around Adrian for a while in Minneapolis and stuff, and the rest of the time he was pretty much of a loner. When him and Adrian were tag team up in their AWA, and then but he was always pretty much of a loner, kind of an office man.
With Jesse, any thoughts of him as a commentator? Because I know that Roddy Piper has said once that the reason why he took so long to make his entrance, his walkout, especially on TV, is that he would give Jesse time to talk about himself, and then after Jesse was done putting himself over, he'd eventually have to refer to Roddy, who was still making his entrance.
It could be true. I don't. It was a lot about him. He was a precursor to Bobby Heenan. And then when Bobby came in, everybody else was a distant second. But he was hitting. He had some good quips. He had some good lines every now and then. Probably. Roddy. Probably Roddy had a thing for him.
With Jesse, when, as you mentioned the movies before, was there any rumours, was it ever mentioned among you and the guys that Jesse had Vince McMahon over a barrel? Because he leaves the WWF after WrestleMania 2, and then he returns quite a few months later to resume his role as a commentator. But basically, I think Vince McMahon had more or less fired him because Jesse was going to do the movies. But then it must have been, I don't know if it's Predator or I think it may have been Predator. Predator ended up being such a big hit that it basically forced Vince's hand to bring Jesse back.
It wasn't, no, not around the, it was, it was pretty cool around boys. It was a mutual thing. I don't know if he actually had Vince over a barrel. But he had a good spot there. He had good leverage, and it was a formative. It was a formative production. It was a formative company in the early, and with the big show, all the pay-per-views were just first timers. So he was there with the bullets and tie-dye jackets and stuff. So he was able to become quite a character. Doing, and it was, I guess, lucrative job.
Okay, next one is Saturday night's main event, number 5, February 15th, Phoenix, Arizona. Mr. T returns to the ring to defeat battling or boxing Bob Orton. His nickname seems to change back and forth. 1 minute into the second round, via uppercutting Bob out of the ring. Piper attacks him afterwards, whips him with the belt. Mr. T returns. Any interaction with Mr. T, first off?
Earlier, I think, for the first WrestleMania, second WrestleMania, I had a few. I was cool with him. He didn't bother me, you know. He was. I guess Piper had a thing for him. So, because his boxing background, which I don't know. He said the wrestling, I don't know, but I don't know why he had a thing for him. Because, you know, he was getting in and getting a free ride. But, you know, he was made his bones on TV and stuff. And, you know, like, what are you going to do? The guy draws a house, has a big card, you know, everything else. That was just, look at all the guys they use now. Some kind of bunny rabbit and, our kit guy and, you know, all kinds of, you know, these all kinds of, what was the beginning, right? WrestleMania, Liberace, Joe Rivers, the dancers.
How big a star was Mr. T back in the day? For people who may be watching this who aren't young, who are too young to remember.
I guess he was pretty big, you know. There was a time there where I went through where I was. He was big. He was big because he was around. He was around us, but you know, we forget more. You know, I was on the right. I missed MASH, the great television series MASH, and a lot of Seinfeld, and a lot of those. You know, from working. You know, men and stuff. Well, now now I watch TV and I know, and well, now there's a million channels, but you know, but back in those days, you know, we were on the road, we were working, we weren't watching TV, so I didn't really know. I knew Mr. T. You know, everybody. I don't know where I heard about him from. I heard about it. Well, he'd already had some foreshadowing on TVs and shows. Pity the fool, stuff like that. So you knew who Mr. T was. He was a gimmick, you know. He was a gimmick like everybody else. And I guess that's what Hogan talks about Pipe. If he'd have gone with it, and they could have made a lot of money using Mr. T, but Piper just didn't want to work with him.
With just because you mentioned MASH, the reason why I like MASH, but only in this country, is because this country was the only territory that MASH was shown where it didn't have a laugh track. So it became more of like because like the laugh track in MASH is awful. It's like so canned. It's so fake. But if you remove it altogether, it then becomes a comedy drama. And then it's really good. And if, because I've got the DVD somewhere downstairs, or the first few series, you can actually turn the laugh track off, and it changes the entire tone of the show. It's great. If you ever have like the DVD, anybody, you can turn the laugh track off, and it changes the show completely, and it's better.
Oh yeah, I gotta try that. I don't recall. It's on every night. I don't watch.
Yeah, but you've got the laugh track on TV, so it ruins it. Just before I go into MASH more, did Mr. T have his own locker room and entourage every single time he turned up?
Gee, the times he turned up when I was around, I was, you know, I wasn't probably, you know, in the WrestleManias and stuff. I'm sure he did, but the times he was with he was hanging with Hulk. And they had, you know, he was with Hulk, and they were planning what time they're going to go to church in the morning, and stuff like that. You know, they're just it was all kind of there. Everybody's swerving everybody's swerving everybody. You know, oh, we're going to go to this, going to go to church at this time. You know, oh God, you know, like you know, is always dropping in on churches.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
Even though he was an outsider, for an outsider who was never a wrestler, how good of a performer was he?
I guess he was a shit. So. I you know, hard, but nobody ever gave him a chance. They never taught him anything. They wanted everybody to be smart, but they wouldn't smarten them up. Go figure, you know. And it's just like that promotion I was doing over here there's a kid's a comedian, Augie T. He's an ex boxer, and he wanted to get with the wrestling and stuff, but the guy's girlfriends, the girls, ladies, her boyfriend didn't want to smart her up, so he's teeing off on him, and he's catching all kinds of punches. I don't know what these guys are thinking, but yeah, they're just, so they never smartened him up. They never trained. Like then several years later, LT Lawrence Taylor went in there and worked with Bam Bam, but I heard that they were training 5-6 days a week up at Stanford and up in the gym in Connecticut and stuff to look, but they never worked out. They never worked with T. They never smartened him up. Never worked with him. I had him give me big knee lifts, took big bumps for him, and got great big bonuses. But
What did he tell, like, let's say, guest referee? And they used to have guest referees where they'd be like former heavyweight champions in boxing. What would you? Did you have any like notable guest referees, like who are outside sports stars, for example? And what would you tell them, and what would they be told as far as refereeing? Is it basically just when the shoulders down, count, and that's it?
Yeah, well, no, I'd let him, don't take any shit from me, or I'd be talking it to him. I'm going to yell at you, and okay, then I'd say, okay, now tear into me or something, something like that. Threaten to throw me out, and I'd beg, point to the locker room, and no, please don't. Don't stop me from getting beaten.
Who refereed then? Did you have any celebrity referees that you worked with that you remember?
Oh, wrestlers and stuff. I don't.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have to smarten them up.
No. Well, everybody else, like Jersey Joe Walcott, he was already, he'd been refereeing for years. He was around. I can't remember. I didn't really have a lot myself. Most of them were just wrestlers or somebody, a manager or something like that. A gimmick.
Swede Hansen, he was one. I know that.
Well, for me?
Yeah. I think I can't remember who you were teaming with. It wasn't Orndorff. I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but I know it was against Andre and Rocky Johnson, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but Swede Hansen was a special guest referee for one.
Swede, I'm thinking of Stan.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Right, I shall move on. Same show, and how could you forget this one? Hulk Hogan defeats Don Muraco via disqualification at 6 minutes 53, when Bobby Heenan, subbing for Mr. Fuji, stopped the pinfall after the leg drop. Post-match, Bundy attacks Hogan with Muraco's help, including 3 avalanches and 2 splashes to set up the WrestleMania 2 main event. First things first is Bobby Heenan's managing you on this show. Why was he? I mean, the on-screen explanation is Mr. Fuji is sick.
They were said there was the whole setup for WrestleMania with Bundy. So I guess that's why they got Bobby in there. It was long. I remember sitting there with George Scott and Vince and Hulk and all those guys, and everybody up in a hotel room in Arizona there, going over it and what they were filming. And Bundy was good. Oh, because Bobby was
managing King Kong Bundy at the time.
Bobby was managing Bundy at the time, and I know Hulk set me up for his finishes or something, and then Bobby then was one of the few run-ins that the WWF was having at the time, and I guess Bundy ran in, and we pile drived to Bundy kept splashing Hulk in the thing, yeah.
Yeah. How unusual was it to work out a finish the day, or an entire match the day before, or in a hotel room the day of?
Pretty unusual, but it was, you're like, it was a setup for WrestleMania. You know, was a setup for a new. Was that 2 or 3?
That was 2.
2. That was the 3. Look at Nassau, Chicago, and
Yeah, that's
L.A.
2.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's 2.
yeah. Yeah, it was a setup. So they want all their I's dotted and T's crossed and stuff. But yeah, it wasn't a normal occasion.
Yeah. Do you specifically remember the crowd I mean, you can hear the crowd reaction, but do you remember it jumping out at you as something particularly intense when King Kong and you were attacking Hogan?
No, it was hot, but I can't remember boiling over into the one of those outrage riot scenes. So it was pretty well. The Hulk was pretty well in the books by then. It was pretty much entertainment, and people were just sitting back being entertained, and not breaking through coming over the barriers and stuff like that.
When was the last time there was like a sort of almost riot situation going on in an arena that you remember? And when was the transition to it's just mostly kids in the audience and no one's jumping over the barricades to come and kill you?
Well, there were some towns in Worcester and up in Massachusetts and stuff. There's some miserable places. They had bleached had stairs above you, had seats over you. They had a ring, and then they had a ring of an upper deck there. Small building. They would just pelt you with stuff. It was just spitting and throwing. It was a miserable place. All that Massachusetts, all kinds of buildings like that. And, those, depending on the building and stuff, by the time you got to, the big shows and stuff, it was, there was security and guards and lights, camera action, everything was pretty well going down.
Yeah. With the WrestleMania 2 main event, King Kong Bundy, some people have said that he was not best suited to be the main event at the time, and and names that could have main evented include Paul Orndorff and you. Who do you think would have been best? I mean, apart from yourself, because I know you'll say yourself for the payoff, if nothing else. Who would you say would have been best suited to main event against Hulk at WrestleMania 2, or was it King Kong Bundy?
Who else was around? There probably was. I would say Bundy. Bundy was a new face. He was odd looking, for his size and everything. He wasn't normal. Then they put him over. He got over. Chris Pally from New Jersey, one of Larry Sharp's boys, and his brother Jeff is a wrestling teacher, wrestling coach down there in South Jersey. They're both from.
Did you ever see King Kong with hair?
I've seen pictures. I think I have. I think I've seen pictures of him with hair.
Do you know, another one would have been, of course, Roddy Piper, who could have done a singles match. I think there was only like one singles match between Hogan and Piper, maybe. That was televised at least, and that was like an MTV special, I think.
Yeah, well, that was the Battle of the Wills there, Well, that was all the office. That was all office. He said, she said. Hulk wanted to go over. Roddy didn't want to put him over. Hulk needed to go over. Roddy needed not to get it beaten. Yeah, it was back and forth. So that they worked a few times. Wherever they throw him for a matinee somewhere, Cincinnati or a big city, and go in and sell out. Instant money, but their program was the whole WrestleMania and that Mr. T. That kind of diverted from Hulk, because Hulk was on his path, right, as the savior White light.
Why was Roddy so reticent to lose? I mean, obviously, he thought, it'd take a lot of shine off him and everything if he was pinned. But, I mean, you were pinned loads and it never mattered. So why would it matter so much if Roddy lost?
Roddy wasn't a big guy. And he never, he saw himself as a undersized heel, undersized wrestler. He was always working out. He ate like a pig. I mean, he ate like, well, not like Bam Bam, but he never, he would binge and go through. Obviously, not a balanced, straight. And he was, Roddy was into business and stuff, so it was hard for him to get his diet. But he kind of felt looked on himself as being undersized, an undersized wrestler heel.
I mean, wouldn't that make it easier to lose then?
Yeah, but I guess he figured with his pit and his rap and his talk and stuff, it wouldn't. You can only talk your way out of so many. You can only talk your way out of so many fights. Before you have to. You have to have something to show for it. So his style was he had to be, overly aggressive and and really take it to the heels.
Would Roddy have made a good champion, or it's usually said that so and so doesn't need the belt, but would Roddy have worked as a WWF champion?
Well, of course, yeah, he would have. He would have worked, yeah. But Hulk was dug in. Hulk had his heels dug in. He wasn't gonna. He wasn't. All the merchandising, everything else was set. Was rolling in that direction, and he was marketable. The blonde hair, the size, the red shirt, the yellow pants, the big bird, and all the t-shirts and everything else. Or their hot rod stuff too. But Hulk was the marketing marvel. That was set forth for the people.
Yeah, well, it was working for years and years and years. So why disturb? Yeah. Why disturb the apple?
Yeah,
or whatever it is. I will ask
you. Kill the goose that laid the golden egg.
That was the phrase that I can't remember. I think it was Bobby Heenan used or Kevin Sullivan used for Goldberg when Goldberg was selling out every arena. No one was getting sick of cheering him, and the first thing they started doing was, he had the streak where he was 71-0 or whatever, and then for some reason WCW started adding extra wins that never happened, and then when it was like really 74-0. They'd announce it as 77-0, and then it increased 2 or 3 more every time, and that's when they stopped cheering him. And then eventually Kevin Nash booked himself to kill Goldberg off immediately, and then there you go. I'll ask you one more, and then we'll close down this podcast because we've had some internet issues, and we've had like about 10 minutes out of this. Is February 18th, Championship Wrestling taping, Mid-Hudson Civic Center. After he pins Butch Cassidy, the Haiti Kid is kidnapped by Roddy Piper and Cowboy Bob Orton. His mouth is taped and his head is shaved to look like Mr. T. Don Muraco. Everybody loves a Haiti Kid story, apparently. It's weird. A lot of people have been asking for Haiti Kid stories, so perfect time to bring them up again.
Could never do that in this day and age. You'd lose your TV. He was a good kid. I heard he's still alive.
Yeah, he's still going.
Yeah, he was a good kid.
How do you actually remember that happening then? The whole kidnapping and shaving his head and stuff.
Yeah, I watched. Yeah, I laughed my ass off. But that was fine. Shaved his head. Even that was pretty radical move. Even for that in that time, that period. Racial tensions and stuff like that. But today's climate, you never get away with something like that. Never. That would be in Jackass 3 or something like that.
Did you see the Rumble? Did you see the Royal Rumble with Johnny Knoxville in?
Oh no.
No, me neither. So Haiti Kid. Would somebody like the Haiti Kid or anybody else who's going to get their head shaved, would they get a payoff for?
Yeah. It's a good kid. The kid, and the office would get their kickback too. It's Little Brook, where I don't know who was booking him then. Probably Little Brook, out of I'm sure they had to get booked out of Kansas City. There, I'm not sure. They didn't have territories for midgets. The ladies wrestling was fading too. There's a few women's groups going around, but they weren't they weren't traveling the territories like they were back before WWE.
How often would the midgets turn up every year?
Once, maybe twice a year. Territory. Good for a card, They last about two shows. One midget tag, and then maybe come back next week with a mixed tag or something. You couldn't do a lot of They did some programming with them. I power slammed 80 Kid one time, almost got killed. That was a riot. Yeah.
A riot as in funny, or a riot as in people tried to come and kill you?
Tried to kill me. Yeah. Power slamming a little black midget. Oh my god. That was you crazy, Don.
So, like, you'd only see him a few weeks a year, and then Haiti Kid would turn up, and then just make a beeline for you.
Yeah. Yeah, he's my little buddy.
What did he want from you then? Were you hooking him up with the?
Well, I just hang around, just go out and I knew where to go to dinner or to eat. I always took care of him, or maybe Fuji or a little Tokyo. A couple of those guys would come around. Tokyo was around. A lot of them stayed, but the old days. I knew from the old days when Cowboy Lang and Bobo Johnson, a bunch of those kids were around.
I bet Mr. Fuji liked it when the midgets turned up. A fresh batch of people to rib.
Oh, yeah. New gang to torture.
Yeah.
Old cat food tuna sandwiches. And you name it.
The usual stuff. Anything specific, or shall I wrap up this podcast?
No, nothing.
Okay, I shall wrap up this podcast then. That was, let me see, we got up to, we got halfway to February 18th, and that took us a little over an hour.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Valentine's Day. So we've got past Valentine's Day at least. So I can carry on with this for I think about 30 episodes. So I'll just do my best and carry on through it then. And I've already written all of March as well. So we've got a couple of episodes in the can there. But for now, I'm going to wrap up the podcast. Plugs again, DonTheRockMorocco.com for all your signs. So are you still doing all the signings and sending them out?
Occasionally.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean...
Not as much. COVID's over. Everybody's back to work, They send, I got some stuff here to sign. Yeah, they send stuff to sign.
Have you got, like, baseball cards and stuff? Because if you have, I'll have one.
Yeah.
I'll put something in the back or something. I asked for a doll ages ago. And
my wife, I don't have... The people call and they bitching me about, I want a picture. I said, I don't, yeah, she told me that. She has a doll.
Yeah, tell her to get on the case and send me the doll. I'll have a signed doll. I'll put it on the wall behind her or something like that. So DonTheRockMorocco.com for all your signed merchandise. You might even get it. And for me, Amazon, the Owen Hart and the Rock books, they sell. They're doing all right, and they've got good reviews. So you could do worse, let me tell you. But for now, I'll wrap up the podcast. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch you again next week. And thank you, Don, once again for entertaining us and enlightening us. Good day.
We will return. All righty.